Hey everyone, back with the first episode of the Cyclone InCYders of the spring semester. Some familiar faces you all know, Aaron, Spencer, and Logan are back, and we've got a new recruit, Nigel. You want to tell him what's up?
Oh yeah, what's going on, guys? My name is Nigel Dyson. I'm a junior here at Iowa State, and I'm a communications major, and I'm minoring in journalism.
We're excited to have Nigel on board, another fresh perspective and opinion to have. And first thing we're going to talk about is wrestling. They've been doing some pretty good things lately. They had a narrow but really huge wins over number 18 UNI and number 9 Missouri over the past week. And both of those wins were made possible by Younger Bastida making big plays, last-second takedowns. Logan, how crazy has his ascendancy been for Iowa State this season?
So it's been really great to see him kind of come into this role. He's one of those guys, especially in the past month, that gets big wins when we need it, in the past couple meets especially. And I was at the Iowa duel when he beat Jacob Warner, number 3 Jacob Warner at the time, and Hilton went crazy. He's just a great guy to have on the team and really gets that atmosphere going.
Yeah, he's had a cool, crazy story, and his ascendance has been much needed for the Cyclones in their big season, especially after the loss of guys like Gannon Gremmel in other weight classes. So yeah, his ascendance, obviously alongside David Carr's continued dominance, has really helped Iowa State wrestling return to dominance.
Yeah, I would also have to agree with the other guys when just saying, like, his addition to what he can bring to the team has been immense. Just to meaning, like, he can really help the team, and he adds depth to the roster. People aren't just worried about David Carr anymore. When you have more people who can bring more to the table, it makes your team overall stronger. And he's just been able to step up, and especially 2 last really close matches.
Yeah, I think kind of just to make sure what everyone has said, the fact that he's now a top 15 wrestler in his weight class, I think is crazy just how far he's come. I know he switched up his style as well, so I think that's probably a big part of it. But moving on, they finished the Big 12 season undefeated for the first time since 2010, and they finished first in the conference for the first time since 2010. Spencer, do you think head coach Kevin Dresser has successfully revived the Iowa State program to really the historic program that they have been up to this point?
Yeah, I think the easy answer is yes. Anytime you have a season like you just named, I'd say your program is back to being in a good place. It's been a while, and it's nice to kind of be someone on the same level as in-state rival Iowa Hawkeyes again. So yeah, credit to Dresser for rebuilding the program.
Yeah, I would say so too. He's definitely had his impact, and then just overall, it's been a really good year for the team as a whole. And I believe it's built great momentum, that they can bring into the postseason and possibly make a deep run.
Yeah, and I think it's great, like what he's been able to do, especially beating all the Big 12 teams this year. Only loss we've had is against Iowa. So I really just think being able to beat every team in the conference is huge. And like you were saying, Nigel, before going into Big 12 conference tournament and the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, when he got hired in 2017, he had a really good pedigree. He wrestled at Iowa from the state of Iowa. And I believe he was the head coach at Pittsburgh, and they had a lot of success. They're not really a success or a historic wrestling program, but Dresser did a lot of good things there. So he seemed like the right guy for the job at the time, and is honestly a really good hiring by Jamie Pollard, considering 5 years later where they're at now, back to being a top 5 team in the country. And they have multiple people in different weight classes who should be able to compete for at least a top 3 spot in the NCAA tournaments. But moving on to one of those people who is going to compete for a top spot for sure. David Carr has 50 straight victories now. He's only lost one duel in his career. Nigel, do you think he's ever going to lose again? And on top of that, do you see him repeating as a Big 12 and NCAA champion?
I hope not. I hope he doesn't get to have another loss in his career. If he could go off into the sunset kind of and just with a perfect record, it'd be great. Regardless though of what happens this like postseason, I think his legacy here at ISU is kind of solidified. It's stamped. But again, it would be really special to see him be able to repeat as a national champion.
Yeah, I think just like what you're saying, Nigel, kind of for him to, I personally, don't see him losing again, especially when, you've been able to show that you can beat your guys in the conference play and be an NCAA champ last year. And I'm sure he will this year. He's just a great guy off too. Just watching what he does with the fans and everything. Overall, just a great guy on and off the mat.
Yeah, I agree with what Logan said. I really don't see him losing again. Obviously, anything can happen in sports and specifically wrestling. Also, what Nigel said, his legacy is already cemented at Iowa State. But he'll go down as one of the greatest Iowa State athletes of all time.
Yeah, I think it's crazy how if it weren't for COVID, he'd probably be at least a two-time Big 12 champion already, and he could possibly be a two-time NCAA champion. And if he does end up using that COVID year for his eligibility in the future, he could be end up being a four-time champion. It'd be 4 times out of 5 years, but again, one of those years was due to COVID, so it'd basically be 4 out of 4. And like you said, Nigel, his legacy is already solidified. But when you consider that he still has all of this ahead of him, and I personally do not see him losing again. If you watch the technique and some of the technical falls he gets, like he beat a ranked wrestler their last matchup against Missouri, like 14-4, just completely, honestly, just completely embarrassed the guy. And when you see him doing that to some of the top wrestlers in the country, it just shows how dominant he is. And I really don't see him picking up a loss ever again, if I'm being quite honest. All right, moving on to women's basketball, another very successful program this season for Iowa State. First topic, Ashley Jones is now the program's all-time leading scorer. She passed Angie Welly's mark of 2,149 points in the loss to Texas on Wednesday with a 3-point play, and she got the record on an and one free throw. Logan, do you think she's the greatest player in program history? And on top of that, what does she mean to not only Iowa State women's basketball, but women's basketball in the state of Iowa overall?
I think you could definitely make that argument that she's the best women's basketball player to come through Iowa State. And just to hit on like what she does for the state of Iowa, I think her story of living in Iowa City her whole life, going to high school there, and then going to the in-state rival, and then winning all these awards that she has, and setting the accolades for her career here. I think it gives she's just someone that women or younger women can look up to in the state of Iowa and in sports in general.
I think she's definitely the best Iowa State women's basketball player ever. Just broke the scoring record, as Aaron said, with plenty of the season left. Hopefully ends in a Big 12 Player of the Year and deep run in the tournament. But she's just been able to rejuvenate Iowa State women's basketball and put the program back in a good place.
Yeah, I would have to say if she wasn't already in a lot of people's minds, she should be now. I really look at her as kind of just like the engine of the women's basketball team. She gets everyone going. When it comes to just like women's basketball in Iowa at the college level, especially like when you talk about girls from Iowa, I think her and Kaylin Clark are kind of just like the two poster girls for just like being able to be from a state and then go to the state school and then bring that state school a lot of success. And kind of just like what Logan said earlier, she really is a role model for the younger generation of girls and upcoming basketball players all around Iowa.
Yeah, just kind of going off of that, like the first game of the season this year for Iowa State was against Omaha, and it was like field trip day, so kids from around the area went to the game and sat in the student section because the game was like it was like at like 11 o'clock. So most people on campus were in class. And there's a lot of kids that look up to Ashley Jones. You could tell like they were like chanting for her and stuff like that. And kind of like what you said about Caitlin Clark. Ashley Jones and Caitlin Clark are two very good people who have kind of put the state of Iowa on the map, both when they were in high school and now, like you said, at Iowa and Iowa State. And I think it is pretty cool that like ESPN, I mean, more so Caitlin Clark because she makes like the crazy threes and stuff, but like ESPN recognized Ashley Jones when she got the scoring record the other day. So I think that's pretty cool. And it's cool that like both of them are going to be in the WNBA too. So they're two very good representatives of the state of Iowa, and just kind of focusing on Ashley Jones. I do think that she's going to go down as the greatest player in women's basketball history, but I know that she wants to go out winning. She doesn't want to be remembered for like getting the record and then getting bounced in the first round of the NCAA tournament. She wants to be remembered for winning. So there's still a Big 12 tournament coming up and then the NCAA tournament, and I know that's what her focus is going to be on. But moving on to the next topic, the loss to Texas snapped a 5-game winning streak for the Cyclones, and the team has now lost 5 straight to the Longhorns. Spencer, do you think they just have a matchup nightmare going on with Texas, or is there anything that the team could be doing differently?
I'd say I can't really, I guess, speak for a few meetings ago, but I'd say this time around they just simply didn't show up and got outplayed. Some games you just throw away the tape. You don't even, look at it at all. And that's one of those games. Specifically that third quarter, the game was still in hand after at half, and then got outscored by 13 in that third quarter. They had 19 turnovers, shot 22 less times than Texas. Just that right there, along with Donarski putting up 0 points, you're not going to win really many games, let alone against a team like Texas. So I just look at that one as a bad performance, I guess.
Yeah, probably just going off of what Spencer said. When I talk about like Texas, especially, I would probably, the thing that stands out the most is there's a matchup nightmare, yes, but specifically with our bigs, I feel like our bigs are just not as talented as Texas's bigs, which is no knock on, our bigs specifically, because to play at this level, you got to be a really good player. But I think when you go up against someone who is more talented than you, it's adamant that you do the little things and the little things well. So that basically comes down to just like controlling what you can control. So the little things as to boxing out, talking on D, playing lockdown defense, and just get 50-50 balls, stuff like that. I think because Texas has a lot of good post players, if you do run into them, say around the tournament time or just like in the Big 12 tournament, you could probably throw out a small ball lineup, probably bring those bigger girls out to the perimeter and see if they can work from outside and maybe get them in foul trouble. But I think really, to go 0-2 on the season against them, it just kind of seems like a matchup nightmare in my opinion, but that's just me.
Yeah, Nigel, and when you're talking about the little things, I think one of the big things was that like they weren't even really able to get off a lot of shots, and then when they were, they just weren't falling. So this is like a low scoring game, not just for Iowa State, but for Texas as well. So credit to Texas for playing good defense. But I think one thing that Iowa State just needs to change is the ability to get off shots, even when they're playing really good defense.
Yeah, kind of going back to the little things, turnovers were grossly in Texas' favor. When it comes to length and just getting in passing lanes, Texas gives Iowa State a lot of problems. That's really been one of the main common themes along with the post play. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the two teams in the Big 12 that give Iowa State the most problems are Texas and Baylor. And they're the two teams outside of Kansas State with Ioka Lee that have the most talented bigs. And like you said with the shots, Logan, Iowa State took like 20-25 less shots than Texas, which just cannot happen. And Donarski was scoreless, but she was scoreless on only like 5 or 6 shots, which is not very many shots for someone who averages 15 points per game. So, yeah, I do think it's a mixture of just not taking care of the ball and doing the little things. And also there is a lot of matchup stuff going on just with the length and the talent that Texas has in the post. And we'll have to see how they do against Baylor the second time around because the Jones sisters will be back for that one. But honestly, right now, the one team I would say that Iowa State probably doesn't want to see in the Big 12 tournament is Texas, because they definitely give them the most problems.
I agree.
They're still, Iowa State's still in a good position. They're tied atop the Big 12 with Baylor now. Oklahoma and Kansas are just one game back. So Saturday's game should be considered a must-win. I know Fennelly isn't really all into that must-win business, but from a fan perspective, I would call this game a must-win. So Spencer, they beat Oklahoma by 10 on the road last month. Or I'm sorry, Nigel. They beat Oklahoma by 10 on the road last month. What do you think needs to be done to get a win at Hilton this time?
I think especially when you play a team twice, usually in like the conference part of the season, and you beat them the first time, I think it's adamant to just stay yourself. Don't try to change up a lot of stuff. Kind of got to look at it as like just another day in the office, type of mentality. But do what was working in the first matchup. I think as our guards with Lexi coming off a tough game like she did against Texas, I think it's adamant that her and Emily Ryan played really, really aggressive and just in your face defense. I think it's important to get Ashley going early, and then obviously taking care of the basketball. You want to limit those turnovers because the way Oklahoma could probably be looking at it is, yes, they beat us the first time, and yes, it was a convincing win, but any team is beatable, and if we can fix our mistakes, we could probably catch them when they're lacking and, take advantage of their mistakes. So I think it's just, if we're taking care of the basketball, and then obviously us being at home, feeding off with the crowd is huge, and just kind of keeping that energy, I think we'll come out successful.
Yeah, and I think especially with Emily Ryan, in the last game against Texas, she only had 2 assists with 8 turnovers, and just being in the press conference rooms with her, I could tell she's very hard on herself with those turnovers. So I would imagine that this will be a bounce back game for her and the whole team in general. And like you're saying, Nigel, they had a convincing win against them last time. So I just think they need to do what they did, and just kind of maybe one thing I did see is that after the first quarter, it was pretty close. So maybe if the defense could start out stronger, and especially with that Hilton, I'm sure it will be.
Yeah, I think some of you guys highlighted it. I think Lexi Donarski is the one big player to watch in this one. Not just coming off that goose egg that she put up earlier in the week, but the game against Oklahoma earlier in the year was arguably even a worse game for her. Went 1 for 12 in that game, 0 for 7 from 3. And then Ashley also went 5 for 25 that game. So our stars really didn't perform in our last outing against them, which I guess is positive that we still won on the road. But we also need to play better defense on Maddie Williams. She was really the only heavy scorer for Oklahoma in that one, putting up 26. So starts with slowing her down defensively, and then offensively getting Donarski going early.
Yeah, Oklahoma, kind of the difference between going from Texas to Oklahoma is that Texas is one of the better defensive teams in the Big 12 and in the country. And then Oklahoma has the number 2 scoring offense in the country. They average like 85 points per game, which is pretty crazy. So it's going to be kind of a switch in mentality for Iowa State. And Jenna Barancic, the head coach for Oklahoma, she played at Iowa, was the head coach of Drake for like a decade before going to Oklahoma this year. So I think Fennelly and the players really are pretty confident in the scouting report because they know a lot about her coaching style, and she's brought a lot of things from Drake to Oklahoma. So I think they just have to be confident in the scouting report is honestly what I think. They were able to get a win on the road last time. They're already familiar with the team and familiar with the head coach, and I think that really does give them a big advantage. And then when you consider the talent that Iowa State has, and I also think Lexi Donarski is going to be motivated more than she usually already is going into this game, coming off that goose egg, like you said, Spencer. I think there's a lot of things that are lining up for Iowa State to be able to get past that Texas loss and get a big win at home. Moving on to men's basketball. They desperately needed a win on Tuesday, and they got it 54-51 against TCU. And it cannot be overstated how important that win was. The NCAA tournament was really starting to look bleak for Iowa State. They snapped the 4-game losing streak. Logan, what did you see in the win that the team can build on in the final 5 games of the season?
Really seemed like overall we were kind of getting back into our defensive game that we were doing very well against the non-conference teams, and our largest deficit was only 6, so it helped that we kind of weren't fighting back the whole game. And although it was a close game, I really, like you said, Aaron, I'm very happy with that. You know, we kind of snapped that losing streak and can get back into what we were doing earlier this year.
The biggest thing I really took from that TCU game was just being able to finish. We've been in a lot of close games, specifically in Big 12 play, and just haven't been able to finish. Haven't played well in the later portions of games. Obviously, we know the offense disappears for large phases of the game, but they got the stops they needed and scored when we needed.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing I saw was just like fight. I think there was more fight in this game than there had been in previous games. And when things didn't go their way, they didn't play perfectly, but when things didn't go their way, they just kept fighting. They kept diving on loose balls and doing the little things that are important when it comes to an ugly game, really, like this one. When the final score is you're in the early 50s, like it's not a pretty game for the most part, and it comes down to who's going to be more resilient and wants to come out with the win. So
yeah, kind of building off what you said, Nigel, I think they played a full 40 minutes this time around. Even when the game looked ugly at times, didn't look like there was any shortage of effort. Whereas against like K-State, they had that 15-point lead, played really well for 20 minutes, and the last 25 minutes since it went to OT really were not that great at all. And I was also at the TCU game that was at home, where they only scored 44, the least points ever scored at Hilton Coliseum. And it was honestly, like, considering that it was a D1 basketball game, it was maybe the worst basketball game I've ever been to in my life. Like, not even kidding. So to see them like go get that win on the road against TCU and kind of stick to their identity, because TJ's talked a lot about how this isn't a team that's going to just go out and make 15 threes. They have to do the little things right. And I think they did that for the most part in that game. And I also think Kalsher holding TCU's leading scorer to, like, I don't remember exactly how much, but he's in the 2 meetings against Iowa State this season, he's got like 5 or 6 points. So that's a lot of credit goes to Gabe Kalsher for that, because Iowa State probably is not even as close as they were in that game at home and does not win this one without Kalsher's defense. But moving on to the next topic, Tyrese Hunter seems to have really solidified himself as that number 2 guy behind Brockington really over the past couple weeks. And it is crazy that he's still only a freshman when you consider how well he's played for how young he is and what a leader he's been for this team at times. Spencer, where have you seen him grow as the season has progressed?
I would say just decision making and his maturity, which happens as you mature as a college basketball player, specifically freshman year after playing in some big games. I feel like now compared to early in the season, he just knows when to kind of chill and then when to attack. Early in the season, I think he got a bit too antsy at times, which led to careless turnovers and being blocked at the rim and stuff like that. So I just think he's matured a lot as the season's gone on.
Yeah, I would probably have to say just really his confidence. And confidence doesn't usually always mean like you're the loudest person in the room, because we've talked about it off screen how Tyrese kind of seems like a laid back kid. But when it comes to being a point guard, you got to be vocal. And I see him a lot more just being like kind of intuitive with his teammates and trying to getting those guys in the right spots, and then just being more confident in himself. Even though he didn't have the best scoring game against TCU, he was a lot more aggressive when it came to driving to the hoop. So if he continues to do so, he's going to make a lot more baskets around the rim, which will obviously create more focus on him as a scorer. And then it's going to leave shooters like Jazz and Gabe open for open shots. So it's good that he's finally coming into, himself and then being more comfortable just with his play style.
Yeah, and one thing you hit on there, Nigel, is that I think also he's been a lot more vocal with the team overall. First couple games, I didn't really see, especially as a point guard, that he was talking as much as he needed to. And another thing is he's been a lot more responsible with the ball, or at least has been hard on himself for being responsible with it. So it's great that we can kind of have him as our assist guy, and he's even hit some big shots. And as a freshman, like you're saying, Aaron, it's really great to see him be able to do this at an early level.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to what you guys have said, but the biggest thing for me definitely is the confidence. Compared to earlier in the season, he's taken the ball to the rim, and like he means it when he does it. He seems like he has a plan. He's either trying to suck the defense in and give it up to someone that's open, or he's going to the rim to score. And I think over the past couple weeks, that's one of the really big things I've seen from him is just knowing when to attack the rim, knowing when to give the ball up to someone like Brockington or even like Kuntz when he's been hot lately. And and then the fact that he just has a plan when he does it, which I think has led to him being more responsible with the ball than he was earlier in the season. He's still had a couple games here and there where he's not as responsible as you'd like from a point guard, but I think that's growing pains. And I also think we've been very spoiled as a fan base to have people like Monte Morris and Tyrese Halliburton, who turning the ball over with them like never happened. And now you have a freshman point guard who's just going through some growing pains. And I think it's a very normal thing to happen. And the fact that he's progressed so fast in his freshman season, I think is really cool to see. But they're at home against Oklahoma on Saturday as well. It's a double header this weekend. They looked pretty bad against the Sooners in Norman. I honestly think that loss was uglier than the final score indicates. So, Nigel, what do you think needs to be done to have a different outcome this time around?
I think keeping the hunger from Tuesday, so like that good mojo and just the good feeling of getting a win after a long period of losing, keeping that energy and then just pushing the momentum into Saturday. That's going to be a big mental aspect of just this entire like approach to this upcoming game. But most importantly, you got to control the pace early, and then, but also for the entire game. Because if I'm not mistaken, the game in January up in Norman, we had the lead, and just slowly we just lost it. And then their crowd was out of this world. I mean, I was watching it over TV in Illinois, and I could hear how loud it was. So I can only imagine how that energy played into, oh, we're not playing well, so like we're just gonna kind of shut down as a team. You physically saw them shut down, and we can't let that happen. Something in the TCU game that I saw that I would like to see in future games, especially this final stretch of the season, is Jaden Walker finally got into the rotation, and even when he was in there, he wasn't doing anything crazy, but he was doing little things. And I think he's a talented kid, so when you put him in a game like that, I feel like he can do some good things, and the other team may not even be ready for it because he's not on the scouting report. So I think if you need an X factor coming into Saturday just for that extra juice for the team, I think probably putting Jaden Walker at some point into the rotation consistently would probably help the Cyclones.
Yeah, and I think like what you were saying there, Nigel, they definitely shut down in the Oklahoma game. We committed 17 fouls, so that definitely doesn't help when you're holding the lead and just can't really fight back after that. And I think our defense is a lot more developed than it was when we first played them. So that'll kind of help us commit less turnovers. And another big plus is that it'll be in Hilton and it's going to be loud. And yeah, I just think overall, we're going to have to keep this mentality of right now, honestly, our backs are up against the wall. So it's either fight or flight into the NCAA tournament or just kind of give up, which I don't think this team's going to give up.
Beyond the obvious of just having to hit our shots, I just think we need to keep this game close, not let it get out of hand. Keep it close. We'll keep the crowd in it. Haven't won at Hilton in a conference game in over a month. We've lost 3 straight. I think beat Texas January 15th, and then beat Missouri non-conference. But we need to keep this game close, keep the Hilton crowd in it, and that should hopefully lead us to victory.
Yeah, the main thing, I mean, everyone knows that this is a team that can be really good at defense and sometimes not so great on offense. But the main thing they need to do, and kind of what you said, Spencer, about not letting the score get out of hand, is they need to stop having those droughts of like 5 minutes that just completely suck the life out of the team, suck the life out of the crowd, and take them out of the game, because sometimes the defense can be lacking when the offense is also lacking. And honestly, what's kept them in a lot of games this season is that when the offense has been lacking, the defense has been able to keep them in it for a stretch until that finally falters too. And it really just comes back to what TJ has talked about a lot lately, and we as a fan base have all talked about, is just a full 40-minute effort. You want to see 40 minutes of fight, and with their backs against the wall at this point in the season, really needing to stack up a couple more wins here to have a shot at the NCAA tournament. I think this team is going to fight pretty hard, like you said, Logan. And I'm honestly excited to see what they do in this game, because this game could be really huge. And if they do it in front of a Hilton crowd, that's going to be really appreciative of them fighting. I think it could be a big momentum boost to close out the season. Just moving on to some random current events. We had the Super Bowl on Sunday. The Rams beat the Bengals 23-20. Everyone already has looked over the stats and, generally knows what happened in that. So we're just going to talk about our general thoughts on that one, since we haven't been able to share them yet. So Logan, you can go ahead. Thoughts on this year's Super Bowl game?
I mean, I'll just keep it pretty brief on my side. I had no dog in this fight, so I kind of just wanted to see who could win this. And it didn't really matter to me, but seeing the Rams, guys like Odell, Andrew Whitworth, Cooper Kupp after his amazing year, Matt Stafford, they all get a ring. I mean, I just think it's great to watch them all win. And, one thing I've been stressing over the week whenever I talk to people about it is Bengals fans should not be sad. You should be sad that you lost the game, but just know that you're going to be back there someday in the next 5 years, I would assume.
Yeah, I'd say I took three main things from it. I think Cooper Kupp had one of, if not the best season ever by a wide receiver. I know there's been Aaron Donald retirement talks. I don't think he will, but if he does, top 3 defender ever. And then last thing, best halftime performance of all time.
Yeah, no, I'm actually a really big Cooper Kupp fan. I was happy to see the Rams get it done just because of that. He was on my fantasy team this year, so helped me in a lot of weeks. I was also happy to see Matt Stafford, just through the trials and tribulations he had to go through in Detroit, to finally get over that hump is huge for him. I don't know if the Bengals will be back in the AFC, because there's talks of the Ravens getting AB. I think that the Chiefs could probably get a little bit stronger in the draft. I was talking with a few buddies, and I was just like, what if Brees goes to the Chiefs? How good that offense becomes, just because he's such a good receiving running back. I think he meshes perfectly.
Or even to the Bills.
Yeah, no, those are literally the two teams I was talking about. But yeah, no, the AFC is just so strong that I think the Bengals, when it comes to the bracket and how it's set up right now, I think they kind of just ran into the perfect teams, to kind of get to slowly get, to the Super Bowl, because there were a lot of nail biters in their games. And but yeah, that's my main thought on the Bengals. I think they're going to be good for a long time, but I don't know if they'll be back in the Super Bowl next year. It maybe in the next few years, but I don't know about next year specifically. Just like Spencer mentioned, though, I was really, really happy with this halftime show. I think it was a huge bounce back from last year's with The Weeknd. I thought that one was just a little weird. But yeah, I really liked Kendrick Lamar's performance, and just overall, it was a great show. It was really entertaining.
All right, I'm gonna disagree on The Weeknd slander. I thought that halftime show was fire, but I'm a big Weeknd guy. But not to pile up on Logan, but I also agree that I don't really know if I'm not saying they can't get back, but they went 10-7 this year, had multiple game-winning field goals in the playoffs. Things kind of lined up for them. And history is not really on their side either, because everyone says Joe Burrow will be back. The past 16 quarterbacks to lose their first Super Bowl appearance have never made it back. And I've heard Dan Marino talk about when he lost the Super Bowl, I think it was his second year in the NFL. So just like Burrow, he was like, oh, it's no big deal because I'll be back here one day, and then never went back. So I don't really think you can take Super Bowls for granted. I do agree that the Bengals fan base should be very proud of the team. And I think there's plenty of reason to be confident that they'll be back. I just don't I'm not going to just like say that they're going to be back because history isn't really on their side in that regard. But I guess my last general thoughts, so we can move on. Cooper Kupp had an amazing game, but I am on the Aaron Donald should have been Super Bowl MVP train. He made several sacks. He sealed the game. I mean, Cooper Kupp had the go-ahead touchdown, but I think there is a thing with like not, favoring the offense over the defense when it comes to those awards. Last one was Von Miller because he went like absolutely insane in that game, and I don't think there was any denying it. But I genuinely think the most impactful player on the field in the game was Aaron Donald. Or I guess you could say the most impactful players were the Bengals O-line because trash. But overall, Aaron Donald, I think, should have been MVP. Those are my thoughts on that. Next topic, this is kind of a worldwide topic. How much have you all paid attention to the Olympics this year? Because honestly, everything just seems pretty weird with the Olympics. Like, it seems like no one really cares about the Olympics. Spencer, you can go first.
I know we're running out of time, so I'll keep it short. I honestly haven't watched a single event. I think it's been the least hyped up Olympics that I can remember in my life. I think some of it has to do with, not as many not as much star power. Shaun White's not in his prime anymore. Speed skater Polo Ono is gone, stuff like that. But I haven't paid much attention, and obviously with it being in China and their work conditions, I think part of that's a reason as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I haven't really watched any Winter Olympics this year. I take that back. I watched curling yesterday, and I mean, I just wasn't really entertained by that. It was Canada versus USA, and I was just like, how do people like people wake up and do that? Like, that's what they do. That's their job, and I was looking at it more from that perspective. I was just like, I guess, but no, I've not been keeping up with the Winter Olympics.
I also have not, but I mean, some of the notifications I've got from my phone from like ESPN, Bleacher Report, just saying like, oh, well, United States lost in hockey. Like Spencer said, Shaun White he's not what he was. And I believe we had a figure skater or someone that also kind of did not do very well, but that just shows you how much I haven't really paid attention to. But yeah, and Spencer was saying before, it just hasn't really been hyped up this year. So I don't really think a lot of people are watching it seriously.
Yeah, I think COVID and the time difference have a lot to do with it. Like, you get notifications from ESPN like overnight about the Olympics, and if you want to watch an event, you have to watch it at like weird times a lot of the time. So I think that's a big part of it. And then when you do watch it, like, it's a rerun, so it's not really the same. So I think those are two really big things. And yeah, it seems like compared to past years, it really has not been promoted that much. Like, it's got like the general promotion of the Olympics, but it hasn't been like, I haven't really seen anything in your face, because a lot of time, like, when it's the Olympics, it's the Olympics, like, it's everywhere. And I don't think it's really been like that. But since we've only got a few minutes left on the Zoom, we'll do one final topic. It's a little late, but I'm just wondering what everyone's general thoughts on the NBA trade deadline are. Nigel, you can go first.
Yeah, I've got a few thoughts. Between the Brooklyn and Philadelphia trade, I would say Philadelphia won the trade, just because, again, you're dealing with a Nets team that, despite getting Simmons still has issues. And I think that, with a hurt KD and a 0.5 Kyrie, meaning like he's only going to be there for half the games, it's just going to be tough for them to make some sort of run this year. And God forbid they have a series with Philadelphia. Those fans are going to be brutal. But yeah, overall, I saw the Bucks Sixers game last night, and Joel had 40 by himself. So Harden wasn't even playing. So I think once he's back in the lineup and acclimated with his new teammates, I think Philadelphia is a contender. Between the Pacers and the Kings, I would say the Pacers won the trade. I was actually just shocked that the Kings had the audacity to tell Halliburton that, like, yeah, we're going to keep you. And then,
franchise.
Yeah, to tell a player, yeah, we're going to keep you, and then 20 minutes later he's gone. And then just the thought of having to leave Sacramento for Indiana is just a tough reality check. But yeah, I think regardless, I've seen the past few 4 games that Halliburton's played for Indiana. He's still his same self. So I would say Pacers won that trade. I think it's really good too that they had Buddy Hield, because it just adds a bit more familiarity to him, because you know they kind of got that chemistry from Sacramento. So I think the Pacers did kind of improve, but you know they're going to still need the draft, I think, to really develop. The Bulls, they got better with Tristan Thompson got waived, so I think the Bulls are picking him up right now. So they just got better rim protection due to like their lack of depth, just because of like injuries and whatnot. So I think the Bulls got better. And then my biggest thing, man, is just the Lakers not doing anything. Like, you don't make any kind of move. We've had a horrendous season, and just like I was at a loss for words, because I was thinking with Sacramento moving Buddy Hield, it gives them now the opportunity to maybe throw something to Indiana so that Hield can come to LA. But no trigger was pulled. I think the Lakers pulled some sort of weak deal with the Kings, but they declined it. So other than that, I have no words for the Lakers. And now AD's hurt, so my heart's in shambles.
So Nigel did a pretty good rundown, and all I really have to say is that I am excited for when Tyrese Halliburton is going to be on JJ Redick's podcast again. So then we can kind of get some more details on that. I think him and JJ have a great relationship and great chemistry on the podcast. Anyway, besides that, again, with what Nigel said, I'm very surprised the Lakers made no moves. And with the Philadelphia and the Brooklyn trade, it almost just kind of seems like nothing. Like, it's a fresh start for Ben Simmons, but then also I'm just not even the biggest Ben Simmons fan. And I just don't really know what the Nets are doing at this point.
I'd say first, starting off with my Lakers. I mean, I'm frustrated that we couldn't do anything. Yeah, I'm more frustrated in the roster construction. You know, in the offseason, I don't really think they could have done anything at the deadline because of how they constructed things. You could have thrown in Nunn into a deal, but I mean, he probably won't even play this year. THT's value is supposedly pretty low. We know Russ's value is low, and beyond that, you don't have anything to trade. So I can't really blame us for not making moves. The Nets Sixers I was happy about because I know we've only gotten 0.5 Kyrie, as Nigel said, but I liked that we broke that Harden, Kyrie, and KD got broken up, because I felt I think they only got like 15 games in together, which is still crazy to me. But I always was what?
Oh, it was 16, but like not a huge difference.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I was just always, I guess I always had that fear in the back of my mind. If and when that did happen, I didn't think there was any chance for anyone else to win a championship. Kind of not nearly as much, but kind of that same fear I had back when the Warriors had KD. I just felt like they would be unbeatable if they played all together. So breaking them up was fine by me. Sixers are contenders, but their depth obviously took a huge hit. Maybe we'll get one or two signings in on the buyout market. The Nets, I mean, we'll see. As Nigel said, you have 0.5 Kyrie. Simmons hasn't played all year. KD's been hurt. It'll probably be tough for them this year, but if all the pieces are healthy and everything, they're, I think, the best team in the league. But yeah, that's about all I have from the trade deadline.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people making a mistake of like crowning the Nets as having an amazing big three already, because like, look at what happened with Kyrie, KD, and Harden. People said that was going to be an amazing big three. The league was going to be taken over by them, and they play 16 games together, and Harden gets traded. And I'd also like to point out that there's one player that seems to be the problem in every situation they're in, whether it's Dwight Howard or Russell Westbrook or now KD and Kyrie, and that is James Harden. And it's been years now that there have been, some people getting annoyed with him, but I would say from like the national media, he hasn't really gotten the flack that I think he kind of deserves now. And we're going to have to see what happens with the 76ers, but especially with the way Joel Embiid's personality was and the way Joel Embiid really did not tolerate Ben Simmons crap, I think there is a solid chance that it's not going to end well with Harden in Philadelphia either. But we'll see. I know there's talk that they want to replace Doc Rivers with D'Antoni, which I don't think they're winning a championship either way. Doc Rivers and D'Antoni are both chokers, but that's just like the honest truth of it. But I do think if they hire D'Antoni, it's just giving even more power to Harden in a situation where I don't think he's necessarily earned it. I think they need to worry more about building around Embiid than James Harden. But yeah, that's just kind of my Harden rant, because as a Thunder fan, people always say like, oh, if they would have kept Harden, they would have won a championship. And like maybe, but like I don't really know, because Harden has just kind of been a problem everywhere he's gone. So yeah, for the Lakers, I was really surprised they didn't do anything. I never necessarily thought they were going to trade Russ, but I definitely thought they were going to at least like explore it more than they did, or at least more it seems like is what's been reported, because what's been reported seems like they didn't really try at all. And I thought they were kind of going to shop Russ around a lot more than they did. And then I guess just going back to the Nets, if Ben Simmons gets back to the kind of player he was like earlier on with the Sixers, and like there's a lot of talk about him developing a 3-point shot, and that seems to always be a thing. He's making 3-point shots in warmups and then he doesn't do it in a game. Regardless, if he's just like a good point guard and Kyrie gets to do his thing in the backcourt, and then Simmons is like the facilitator, rebounder, Magic Johnson type player for them, I think they can be really dangerous if KD also gets healthy. But yeah, I guess I don't really have any more thoughts than that. As a Thunder fan, like since they're just trying to get stock up on draft picks right now, there's not really anything interesting going on there. And that's obviously the team I care about the most. So, but just as a neutral fan for those other teams, that's kind of my opinion, I guess. And you guys already touched on a lot of it. Nigel touched on a lot of it too. So yeah, that's all we've got for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in to Cyclone InCYders. We'll be back next week. Should be a good semester. We got some successful Iowa State teams in play right now. So looking forward to talking about all of that. Once again, thank you guys. Peace.